All right, we are live. Thank you for joining us for the February cannabis industry update with a special little portion about the cannabis stock market as well. We have a report that we produced this month that we're going to go and review as well. So lots of great things for this month's update for the cannabis industry. If you're watching the replay, go ahead and skip ahead a few moments here. We're going to get started with the live session, all the content here in about 90 seconds. Also, if you're on the live session, let us know where you're calling in from, what vertical the cannabis industry you're in. Are you a grower, a retailer, manufacturer? Maybe you're an ancillary business, things of that nature. Please let me know. Drop that into the chat here. And then any questions. We're going to go through lots of questions if you have them. So drop those into the chat, anything related to the cannabis industry, and we'll get into that. Again, we'll start at the top of the hour, a few moments here. So let me just check the last few settings. We'll let the room fill up. Again, thank you everyone for joining in. All right, lots of good stuff here. Lots of people joining in. Again, drop into the chat platform where you're calling in from. Beautiful. Don, he's a retailer. Jorge is advertising in the cannabis industry. Good to see everyone here for joining. Thank you. Again, more people dropping in there. The more comments, the more we can make this interactive. I love talking, as you all probably know. You've seen me on the videos, but I like having a discussion, a back and forth, being able to share things and help people and enlighten them and give them some value here. All right, Jorge's in Tucson, Arizona. Excellent. It's beautiful to see a lot of people joining in here. Thank you for joining. Again, kind of a two-part series here. We're going to talk about cannabis industry updates, like the typical normal things that we talk about with news, and then we're going to go over the kind of market report here. Erica Ciate, hey, from Montana. It's great to see you. Great to see you. I think we have a meeting scheduled tomorrow, so I look forward to chatting with you. But it is the top of the hour. It's 3 p.m. here in Detroit, 12 o'clock in California. Let's go ahead and get started with our presentation. So quickly on the agenda here, actually, let's start with a disclaimer real quick here. The information contained in this presentation is meant for guidance purposes only and not meant as professional, legal, or tax advice. And further, it does not give any personalized legal, tax, investment, or any business advice in general. Sorry, I talk with my hands a lot. I got a comment on the last live stream to calm it with the hands. So we'll see how it goes here. But chat filling up here. Bobby's Highway 29 Healthcare from Vallejo, California. Mr. Syed here. Great to see you. Thank you for joining. Again, let's jump into the agenda for today. So first, we're going to go over the big industry updates, developments for the past 30 days, tax, finance and M&A, licensing, legal, and then a few little other things here. And then second, we're going to go over our financial market report that we released middle of this past month, detailing things about the general macro market, stock market, as well as a little bit of details about the cannabis industry and tracking those as well. And finally, throughout the presentation and near the end as well, I'm going to take some questions. So drop questions into the chat. If I don't get to them right away, I apologize. But as we go through, I'll get to everyone's questions, no matter how long I got to stay here. So let's take care of that. And lastly, 2 housekeeping items. So I'll say 3 of them, all right? First, if you need a copy of our report, I'm going to put a link in the chat here. I'm not sure this goes out to every one of them, but go ahead and go to the it's greengrowthcpas.com/cannabis-stock-market-report. You can get it on our website. On the top, there's a thing that said knowledge base in the menu. The second item down from there is going to be the cannabis stock report. Check that out. That's what we're going to be going over at the end of this report. Now, secondly, if you need help with anything related to your cannabis business and the finance or tax, please reach out to us via our website at greengrowthcpas.com or give us a call at 800-674-9050. That's the stuff right here. All right, and finally, if you haven't already, please subscribe to our channel. Tell more people about it. The more people that join, the better the conversation can get. All right, so let's hop into our updates here. For taxes, I have 2 main updates. First one, very interesting here, is let me just go ahead. I'm actually going to start sharing my screen for this, make it a little bit more dynamic here so you guys can see certain things. Beautiful. All right. So this Senate bill here, Senate Bill 1074, was introduced on February 15th. And pretty much what it says is trying to end the flat rate cannabis cultivation tax for the state of California. If passed, the dry weight tax would pretty much fall off the books on July 1st. 2022. Now, the current tax rate is about $160 per pound for flower and three times 16 is like 50 some bucks for trim. So it's a pretty significant, depending on what you're selling your cannabis for. Now, it first was enacted, the cultivation tax was first enacted in 2016 via Prop 64, and it's been a headache for growers ever since. And it's been seen as pretty much a big hurdle for those that are trying to go from the illegal market to the legal market. It's just one more financial burden that you have to manage. However, if they do take back and repeal this cultivation tax, it's going to increase the excise tax on July 1st, 2025, which is a bit out, but it will increase that tax. There's going to be two increases that come from this tax on July 1st, 2025 through 2026, and then on July 1st, 2026. So both of them on that same date, but 1 year apart, they're going to increase the excise tax again. And with this increase in excise tax, they hope to offset all of the tax that would have been accumulated from the cultivation tax. Essentially, what the government or the legislature is going to do is take the tax off of the growers and push it onto the retailers, who then push it onto the customers, essentially. So that's a yikes situation. I don't know, man. We'll go into another thing here about cannabis taxes and stuff like that, about the gravity of these taxes relative to alcohol taxes in the next article. But taking taxes from one entity and just shifting the kind of blame or duty onto somebody else is not necessarily the greatest idea, but that's what this Senate bill here is offering and pushing forward. I implore you to read a little bit more about this if you care about it, but this is an excellent one here to talk about. Now, another one here to talk about, I don't have an article to push about it, but what you're seeing is that it's more of a statistic I want to talk about, and that's cannabis tax revenue is exceeding alcohol tax revenue in nearly every state that it is legal to have cannabis. Now, Americans drink far more alcohol than they do use cannabis. It's almost 8 times as many Americans binge drink than smoke cannabis just one time per month. Now, there's no doubt which one of these vices, though, is very important to the American government, state and local governments. Now, your schools, your roads, and yes, even your police are all gears that are greased by cannabis dollars. Now, earlier this month, Massachusetts announced that for the first time, Massachusetts is a new market, so very early, I'll say, into the market relative to other markets, that earlier they announced that for the first time, cannabis tax revenue has exceeded alcohol tax revenue. So midway through their fiscal year 21-22, Massachusetts rang up $74 million in cannabis excise tax. Compare that to $51 million of alcohol excise taxes. So that's nearly 50% more revenue of tax revenue coming from cannabis. And with an average of 8-to-1 consumption, that's a 12-to-1 tax here. So, I mean, that's a really big over-index in the amount of taxes. So when you're looking at who's really moving the needle here, it's the cannabis entrepreneurs that are adding a lot more to these budgets for state and local governments. All right, so that's the 2 tax updates here. I also want to get into some finance and M&A stuff here. So let's start to the first one here, is that Safe Banking Act. So the U.S. House has passed a measure to include cannabis banking. Now, the U.S. House of Representatives passed an American competitiveness bill this month that includes legislation that would enable banks to serve cannabis businesses without fear of any backlash or anything like that, but it's unclear whether this is going to pass fully through Congress here. Now, the Safe Banking Act was put into the National Defense Act, but stripped out later from the leadership, from the Senate leadership. But the full House passed a multi-billion-dollar called the American Competes Act, the creation of opportunities and meaningfully promote excellence in technology. Wow, that's a mouthful. Compete Act of 2022. Essentially, the American Competes Act is also referred to as a China competition bill and is intended to boost U.S. competitiveness, in part by strengthening the semiconductor manufacturing industry. It's really, you've seen this stuff in the news. This is kind of what they're doing. But when you can tuck legislation in like the Safe Banking Act, that would be an excellent kind of move. To some people, other people not so much. But however, let's look at it this way. The safe banking language will eventually need to go back to the Senate, where it was killed last time, for consideration. And one side is going to say, hey, it's very broad. And the other side is going to say, hey, it's too narrow. And you see that key Senate Democrats who claim to support cannabis legalization have, taken the position that chipping away at federal prohibition with piecemeal legislation like the Safe Banking Act, essentially one thing at a time, or singular tax reform, isn't the way to proceed with, good legalization. I can see those points. I can also see where the Safe Banking Act really does need to move forward, because this is like the biggest pain point for, aside from taxes, for all operating cannabis businesses. So it's likely that the Safe Banking Act will get ripped out of the America Competes Act, unless some type of miracle happens. So that's pretty much, I would say, don't bank on it. Don't let anybody get you excited that this is going to happen. It's going to be a sure deal. It will not be a sure deal. Now, the next one here I want to talk about is Verano and them buying Goodness Growth for $413 million. These are big M&A deals, almost $500 million. So Verano will be entering the coveted New York, Minnesota, and New Mexico markets with the proposed M&A deal they have here. And the proposed acquisition expected to further their national geographic expanding again into New York, Mexico, in both states as they transition into adult use. This could not have come at a better time for Verano. They're going to be securing one of 2 vertically integrated licenses in Minnesota, so it's a very valuable asset, and increasing their operational footprint in Arizona and Maryland. Now, in some more details, upon the finalization of this acquisition, Verano's footprint will span 18 states, with active operations in 15 of those states, including 17 cultivation facilities with 1.3 million square feet of cultivation capacity and 111 active dispensaries. That's a big company. Some more details here. They're going to obtain one of 10 vertically integrated cannabis licenses in New York. They're going to acquire one of 2 vertically integrated licenses in Minnesota, which I said earlier. And then in New York, they're going to gain delivery access to the New York City area via a dispensary on Queens Boulevard, centrally located next to the Long Island Expressway. Big stuff popping here for Verano. And in Minnesota, Verano will obtain 8 dispensaries, including one in the heart of downtown Minneapolis, and 4 more across the Minneapolis-St. Paul metro area. Big deal, huge deal here. Between 2022 and 2026, these net new markets are expected to generate a combined revenue of more than $13.8 billion. This is going to be a big deal for them. Excellent strategic move to expand their footprint, get into these markets that are actively growing. So very happy to report on that. I think it's a great deal, big deal to take note of. Now let's go into another one here for cannabis finance and M&A, is that Safe Harbor is going to be trading on the Nasdaq via a $185 million SPAC deal. Huge news here, okay? So a cannabis financial institution is on its way to the public Nasdaq through, again, this $185 million merger. Safe Harbor Financial has announced a definitive agreement this month to be taken public by Northern Lights Acquisition, which is a blank check company, also known as a special purpose acquisition company called a SPAC. We've done some videos on this. Go to YouTube, type in Cannabis SPAC, SPAC, and you can learn a little bit more about what these are. But essentially, these are companies that raise a big amount of money without knowing what they're going to deploy that money against. They know that it's going to be in a specific industry, but they can't say, we're raising $185 million to go buy this company. It's to join a specific industry. And I believe, if I'm right, it's 80% of the capital raise has to go to one company. You can't do like 75 equally sized deals. There's got to be one kind of king or queen deal, and then the rest to kind of trickle in to fill out that SPAC. Now, under the merger, New York-based Northern Lights, an affiliate of Luminous Capital, will pay $70 million in cash and $115 million in common stock to acquire Safe Harbor, which is a subsidiary of Colorado-based Partner Colorado Credit Union. The estimated post-transaction equity value of the company is then going to be $327 million, which they can then use for cannabis businesses to help with loans and accounts and all these other financial services that cannabis businesses need. And if you're interested, Northern Lights is trading on the Nasdaq as NLIT. NLIT. All right. So amazing stuff here. You're seeing This is the woman that runs Safe Harbor Financial here. Great stuff. Very excited for them. Very excited for the industry. Getting lots of good looks here. All right. So that's everything with finance and M&A. Let's go ahead and drop into licensing and regulation updates. Now, one that caught my eye from the Philadelphia Inquirer here was that Amazon, and we talked about this in the 2022 kind of guidance of what's to be expected for this year. And the big thing was you're going to see much bigger companies pushing forward for I would say legalization of cannabis. And it's going to be a reason that you probably knew, but you didn't know you knew why they're doing this. So again, Amazon pushing for legalization of cannabis. Now, why are they doing this? They're trying to remove hiring impediments, which Amazon has found disproportionately impact individuals of color. We know this. We talk about this often as well. Now, Amazon has worked to changing marijuana policies internally, and it has backed congressional reform, as well as enacting an employment policy change last year to end drug testing for cannabis for most of their workers. Now, months after making those changes and following the introduction of the States Reform Act by Representative Mace also met with Amazon and received the company's endorsement. She said they don't want to sell it. I'm sure Amazon might get into selling cannabis at some point if it makes economical sense, but she said they're not interested right now in selling it, adding that their primary interest is, backing the reform for hiring purposes instead of a way to eventually sell the cannabis. It's going to open up the hiring pool by 10%, they say. That is a lot right now. We'll get into this a little bit more. I was reviewing some analyst calls and listening to them, but aside from Amazon supporting legalization efforts, Apple is joining in too. Now, for years, very large tech companies, including Facebook and Google, they've refused to pretty much acknowledge the legality of industrial hemp, let alone the legality of medical or recreational cannabis. Okay, so finally, Apple just bucked that trend and said, hey, don't worry about this. Check this out. So in June 2021, last year, the fine print of the App Store review guidelines released some kind of update. And you may have saw this because, your weed delivery apps are now on the App Store. Is that in the terms they said, apps handling sales and delivery of medical and recreational cannabis in legal jurisdictions are now allowed on the App Store. This was monumental. This is huge stuff. Granted, it all has to be geo-fenced in, so you're not selling to someone who is not in a legal place, but this is a big step forward by big companies saying, we want to support the change, the generational change in the world that's happening, and this is a good move. Now, while listening to many of these kind of earnings calls is something that us nerdy finance dudes and gals do, but we listen to these calls, and analysts are saying that there's, one main reason for a rising cost of worker shortages in the transportation sector. You hear this often. It's a lot of this is coming up. It's pretty much federal criminalization and the resulting drug testing mandates that persist even as states enact legalization. So by having to do all these drug tests because of the state or the federal guidelines, you pretty much push out a lot of candidates that would otherwise be good candidates for jobs. Now, we need to look at the challenges associated with cannabis testing in the trucking industry to really understand this. Again, if you listen to one call or 1,000 calls, what have you heard? Logistics, transportation costs, trucker costs are all going higher, and that's going to continue to occur. Now, the reason is very, very simple, and some of you may know this, but you may be new. It's really about this drug testing. We've legalized cannabis in so many states, but obviously not all, but some. And as you know, there's a federal mandate for drug testing from the U.S. Department of Transportation. If you have this legal thing that people can use on a normal everyday basis, but they have a job that mandates that they work in and operate a U.S. Department of Transportation licensed vehicle, they have to submit to drug testing. Okay, so it's not just interstate drivers. The U.S. Department of Transportation regulations apply to vehicles that are used over a certain size of vehicle. I believe it's a weight, a gross weight, or a wheelbase. I forget which one it is. But at any rate, yes, that likely includes your little blue Amazon trucks that drive around, dropping off that little widget that you need by 2:30 tonight, and you pay the extra $5. They can't continue to fill out this last mile delivery system if you can't have people that smoke cannabis. Maybe they don't smoke on the job, but they smoke after they get home, because it's hard ass work lifting up all those boxes and moving and driving and running in snow and sleet and all these kinds of things. So that's one of the big things you're starting to see, is that major retailers, people that have a huge stake in legalization because of the the workforce issue, are going to start to push heavily in lobbying for cannabis. So that was something that caught my eye. I thought I wanted to share that with you guys more on some legalization stuff. Now, the next one here has to deal with Hawaii and their medical marijuana industry, and they're calling for less regulation just because of like how the market has matured here. You can read or you can just listen to what I'm speaking about here. But essentially, a new report from Hawaii's medical marijuana industry calls for less regulation as concerns grow over sustainability of the dispensaries inside the state. Now, the Hawaii Cannabis Industry Association paid for the report that's cited in this article here, conducted by well-known economist Paul Brubaker. Now, it notes that 31% of cannabis patients are getting their cannabis from a licensed cannabis farm here. Oop, I'm getting logged out. Let me log back in here. Oops, sorry, little issue here. And 69% of people are actually getting it from another source. That's a big, big deal. The report pretty much points out to a failure to deter the sale of illegal cannabis. Okay, so you're not getting people incentivized to leave their cousin that supplies them with cannabis or their friend that grows it, because of taxes are too damn high, pretty much. Now, another concern, also the report cites that sales have plummeted, which they're citing growth statistics. So I find this report a little bit skewed here. Again, the industry paid for it. They're going to bend the words a little bit to kind of push their point. I agree with them in the macro, but what they're saying here is not really that much. So let's talk about it. They're saying that the growth has slowed down. So growth was 110% in 2019, then 68% in 2020, and then just 12% in 2021. Of course, when your denominator keeps growing, it's very hard to achieve 100% year over year growth. So that's the little qualm I have with this report. But essentially, you're going to top out. You're going to hit this great growth, and then it's going to flatten out, and growth is not going to be as much, but the industry is still growing. But essentially, this report is blaming regulation, citing tax burdens on the clients as well as on the producers, and the limits of the number of retail location and production locations in what they call a cumbersome medical ID verification process. It's not very simple to get cannabis in Hawaii. Now, the association, the Cannabis Industry Association of Hawaii, has proposed some solutions addressing those problems, including allowing medical marijuana licensees to build more retail outlets. If they have the money to do it, why not let them do it? And it fits within the regulations of where the zoning requirements, let's do it. As well as to increase the production amounts, and then finally, to allow sales between licensees. Now, the wholesale transactions between licensees could cut costs and increase supply levels, because someone may be very great at growing cannabis and selling it at the retail level, but someone is like really good at selling on a retail, but they just don't have enough cannabis to sell. So allowing them to do licensee sales, that would be excellent. This is something that sounds crazy that they can't do this, but Montana was like that, but it's not like that in California. It's not like that in Michigan. It's just these kind of small little nuances that seem like, oh, they're just 3 lines in the regulations, but these 3 lines cause so much headache that, damn, like it really, really messes with the kind of industry out there. So overregulation is just crushing these industries, or these, I would say not industries, these markets, but the cannabis industry overall. I know we talk about it every month, the same thing, but hey, it's a systemic problem, a problem we continue to talk about, continue to keep the conversation going. It's good to see, as we talk about the beginning here, the cultivation tax potentially being repealed from California. That's because the conversation has to keep coming up. I know it's like beating a dead horse, but this is the kind of way things get changed around here. And the next one here, Chuck Schumer is proposing to put his legalization bill out in April. He's been talking about it for a long, long, long time here, but now we're going to actually get something out of him and his group. So Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer announced this month that he formally is going to introduce his long-awaited cannabis legalization bill to Senate this April, saying that marijuana policy reform is a priority for him. Now, Schumer, a Democrat, and the senior U.S. Senator from New York, made his comments at a February 4th event in New York City that was attended by lots of lawmakers and drug policy reform advocates talking about this pretty much. And he said that Schumer last said in late July that he planned to introduce the Cannabis Administration and Opportunity Act, also known as CAOA, to legalize and regulate marijuana at the federal level. Now, along with the Senate Finance Committee Chairman Ron Wyden of Oregon and New Jersey Senator Cory Booker, the Majority Leader released a 30-page draft version of the legislation designed to spur some discussion of the issue. And he said, in the coming weeks, we're going to be ramping up our outreach, and we expect to introduce final legal legislation here. Now, our goal is to do it in April, is what Chuck said. They're going to begin with a nationwide push, spearheading through New York to get the federal law done. Again, he said the priority is legalization. Let's see what he actually does. Now, under the CAOA, marijuana would be removed from the list of regulated drugs under the Controlled Substances Act, and cannabis would instead be regulated and taxed like alcohol and tobacco, which is great. I think that's what most people are looking for, this type of reappropriation of how it's regulated. The measure also includes social equity provisions to expunge convictions for low-level federal marijuana convictions, and it establishes a federal tax on marijuana products. Ooh, and different revenue that's generated from that could be for grant programs and things like that to invest in communities. So as long as they use the tax revenue for good stuff, that's great. But making a more militarized police state, I don't know about that. But that's too much opinion for me to get into. But at any rate, as you said before with the earlier stuff, these kinds of Safe Banking Act, these kind of piecemeal legislation, a lot of people on the Democratic side are like, hey, we don't want to do just one-off things because we might get too happy or too satisfied or too complacent when we get 65% of the way there, that we need to push it fully over the finish line with a full, all-encompassing bill. And that's what the CAOA could be for the Democrats. So let's see how that pans out. I wish them much success in getting this out there. Now, if you have any questions about any of the stuff I'm talking about, or have an opinion, or want to have yourself heard, drop it into the chat on the platform that you're on. I would love to, voice your thoughts as well too. This is our show, but it's your show too. Now let's go ahead to legal updates here. First one here is that essentially what it says in this article is that the feds are going to be able to prosecute state marijuana licensees. Now, two main cannabis growers can be prosecuted under federal drug laws despite a bar on the U.S. Justice Department spending money on cases against cannabis users and businesses in states that have legalized medical cannabis. A federal court has ruled out here. Essentially, this month, the First U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals said while the federal funds generally cannot be spent on prosecuting medical marijuana businesses, those people that are engaged in blatantly illegitimate activity could still face charges. Now, the ruling marked only the second time an appeals court has weighed in on the department, on whether the department can prosecute cases in Maine or the 35 other states that have legalized medical cannabis, which remains, again, illegal under the Federal Controlled Substances Act, or the CSA. Now, some backstory on how did this all come up. A congressional budget rider known as the Rohrabacher Amendment, which has been attached to annual appropriation bills since 2015, it bars the Justice Department from spending any money to prevent states from implementing laws legalizing medical marijuana. Now, the two defendants in this case were indicted in 2018, after that amendment has been consistently placed in there. Now, the collected evidence in this case established the defendants engaged in a very large-scale illegal marijuana operation that used medical marijuana licenses as facades for selling cannabis to unauthorized users. So, all of you gray market operators, or anyone that has one foot in the legal market and one foot in the illegal market, you really, really need to take a hard, cold look at yourself in the mirror and say, hey, is this really worth the risk? You need to keep yourself legit, keep yourself clean. especially when you start to think about going public. You want to have audits done on your financials. There's going to be a lot of documents, and things that you thought were suppressed are going to come to light. If you're going to take on investors, they're going to want to do due diligence and in deep dives onto your financials. If you're having these kind of one-off drop-ins of 40,000, 80,000 from your side deals, it's going to look really fishy, and you're going to have to fess up to it. But essentially, I want to get across here that even though there are mandates that the Department of Justice should not be pursuing you while you're in a medical state, if you do start doing illegal things, you can be held to a very high standard, and you're going to be pretty much reamed for it. Not a good look, not a good place to be at. All right. Now, the next one here coming out of California is that a judge is essentially declining the stop of cash seizures. So as a cannabis business, you probably don't run your own money back and forth to the bank. If you do, more protection to you. I hope you are safe in what you're doing, but paying for an armored car service is a very good idea to reduce your risk and make sure the money is getting to the bank or to the facility that you need it to get to, right? You don't need to take it to a bank. These armored car services can take it to whatever facility you need it to. But at any rate, a federal judge refused to issue an emergency order blocking law enforcement agencies from continuing to seize money from an armored car company of licensed marijuana dispensaries. Now, I don't want to go too deep into this one, but essentially, there was a group out there. Their name was Imperial Logistics. And what they do is they bring cash back and forth from dispensaries to banks. And what they were experiencing was what they believe a targeted attack from the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Office and the FBI, where the Sheriff's Office would target the vehicles, seize the cash, and then turn it over to the FBI for forfeiture, civil forfeiture, and then nothing ever happens. No charges are filed against the logistics company, and they're just out this money. It's like big deal, you know? It is a really big deal. It's and to the tune of almost $1 million, I believe. So it's not like 80 racks. You know, this is a lot of money here. So the judge and the groups go back and forth. Essentially, there is no way that the judge is going to stop this activity because what the delivery service, or that's a delivery service, the cash logistics service says that we work with mostly licensed retailers. Okay. When you said mostly, you brought up an air of doubt, essentially, that the judge could say, well, then you must be serving people that are doing illegal stuff here. So we don't know if this cash is from legal businesses or illegal businesses. Too bad, so sad, you're out of your money. Well, the company has now filed a lawsuit in the Central District of California, accusing the FBI and the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department of scheming to illegally pull over company vehicles and seize the money. It's a big deal, you know. Even though there are laws protecting you, it's your word versus the law, and the law's word, and the man or the woman of the law, essentially, not the law specifically. It's a lot of effort to defend yourself in court, whether it's legitimate or not, or if it's like a frivolous, crazy ass stuff. You know, you're still gonna have to go out there and defend yourself and defend your business. This is just one of those examples. So just food for thought here. All right, I don't see any questions, but we're going to continue down. I have two other things, and then we're going to jump into the financial report stuff here. Now, number one here I think is really cool is we didn't get any Super Bowl ads. I would hope there would be some Super Bowl ads for cannabis companies, but too bad, so sad on that as well. But the NFL is awarding a $1 million grant to studies on the impact of cannabis and CBD on pain management. The National Football League, the NFL, this month again announced that $1 million research and funding through University of California, San Diego, and the University of Virginia. The studies will investigate the effects of cannabinoids on pain management and neuroprotection from concussion in elite football players. This is excellent stuff. I'm very excited for this. It's good to see very large, iconic organizations of American culture starting to say, hey, we need to really look into this for our players and for the people that are involved in our very large, again, organizations. It's a nonprofit organization, if you know that. The NFL, greatest one they got out there of, how to do a nonprofit. I believe it's a nonprofit. If I'm wrong, correct me in the chat, but I believe it's a nonprofit. Crazy stuff, but very exciting to see that they're looking forward to learning more about cannabis and not just chalking it up. I mean, last year they did the thing where they stopped testing for it to the players. I think this is a great second move in the right direction. And then Second one here, let's go pull this up as well. This makes me very happy to report on this. And now there's this thing in Michigan. I'm out in Michigan. I'm originally from Michigan. There's this thing, the old Gibraltar Trade Center site off I-94 between exits 237 and 240. On the west side, there's this big sign. I'm not sure if this article has a picture of it. This guy right here, the old Gibraltar guy, you've probably seen this. And now it's retro going to look like this here, Pleasantries. They have done a joint venture with a local, very large apple orchard who also has a hard cider business. They've opened up this beverage facility, we'll call it, but it's going to be a grow facility, a dispensary, delivery, pickup, all kinds of things here. So I'm very happy to see Pleasantries crushing it. I have friends that work at this company, and they are just like happy to be a part of it. So big things happening. And what's cool about this is that you see the synergies of local business here. This is a business that's worth tens of millions of dollars, the cider business, as well as the cannabis business, coming together, rallying up the locals to say, hey, this is cool, let's do this. This is being covered on very large news organizations in our area. It's now getting national news, and it's getting this large push from us as well. So very happy to see that for Pleasantries. Congrats to the hometown cannabis people out here in Michigan. Love to see it. All right. Drop your questions into the chat here. We got Glenn Choi says, what other states have high taxes similar to California? The answer is every one of them. Every state has an obnoxiously high tax. Now we're talking the difference between 25% or 30% is, that's a 20% increase, but it's negligible. All states and cities have a very high cannabis taxes. Why is that like that? Because the people that were pushing, the legislators that said, hey, let's do this cannabis thing, they ran on the platform that the taxes are going to solve all of our issues. Those roads in the back that are totally crushed and dying? Cannabis is going to take care of that. You know how this other infrastructure is crumbling? Cannabis will take care of that. Let's just legalize it and tax it. Everyone rallied around that. They approved it on that. And now it's very hard for these legislators to say, we need to lower these taxes. No one likes to hear lowering taxes on businesses. They're like, we want lower personal taxes. Who gives a damn about the businesses? So since they ran on the platform of on taxes, having them very high, it's just impossible to bring them down. But Glenn, all states are going to have very high cannabis taxes. Again, we brought up that California is bringing down particular taxes and scaling up other ones. You might find those certain ways, but I think the bigger one is to look at licensing fees. Which states have lower licensing fees? That would be like the Oklahomas of the world, or places that have unlimited licenses can help you in such that lower licensing fees means better access. I think that's the best kind of social equity programs, is giving everyone access, not just people that have lots of bucks. If you have lots of money, yeah, you can pay your way in. You can just pay a social equity applicant to be the face. They may be I think 51% owner, but they're due no profits and they're only due $100,000 salary per year. They have no upside. They may have 1% of upside type of thing, but they're not due any profits. That's the issue you're seeing with these social equity laws. Don't mandate specific profit distributions or fundamental contract clauses that don't allow people to dance around. People, I mean, these big ass cannabis monopolies to dance around the regulations. So, glad to answer your question, Glenn. Glenn says, joining for the first time. Hey, thank you for joining. I appreciate it. All right, Adam says, what software systems are great for inventory and COGS management for cultivation facility? Looking for it to sync to QuickBooks Online. I've heard and spoke to Backbone, because there's many different software systems that can go with inventory and COGS management. There's one out there called DEAR, DEAR. And Marco would be a better one to ask this. I just know that we do have implementation for this. I don't know what they do specifically for the software. I just know that DEAR is one of them, because we just got had a meeting about that like 2 or 3 days ago. Another one we do as well is Growius. Now that's more of a reporting software. It's not specifically meant for inventory management, but it can create reports that help with that. But if you're looking for inventory management stuff, go to our website, greengrowthcpas.com. That's right here. Click on the Get Started button, fill out the form, let them know that you're looking for a software on this, and you can speak with our team that's a little bit more knowledgeable in the details of that. We have a service called our outsourced CFO service. We can take care of all these kinds of financial things so you can focus on what really matters most to you, which is operating your cannabis business. All right, so thank you for those questions. Let's jump on to the second portion of our live stream here, which is our comprehensive report on cannabis stocks and public markets. All right, so if you don't know where to get this report at, it is, again, I'll put it into the chat here. I'm not sure if it's going to go to all the streams here, but at least on YouTube. I'm not sure if it's on LinkedIn or not. But again, on our website, you can go and get it in the menu here. There's a thing that says knowledge. Under knowledge, there's a thing called Cannabis Stock Market Report. Go ahead and hide on down to that, and you can go ahead and get yourself this report. But let's go ahead and jump into some details of the report real quick. Let me just flip up and get the next stop screen sharing. Let's share it one more time. Window. Boom. All right. Beautiful. So this report right here is our financial market report, and we're releasing it on a monthly basis here. Now, what does this report cover? There are three main parts to this report here. Now, first is a monthly economic recap, and this is where we're going to review what happened in the past month regarding public markets, including the Fed meetings, inflation, labor statistics, and commodities. The second part is going to be key indices and their performances, looking at the S&P 500, the Nasdaq, and the Dow Jones, as well as our green growth cannabis stock indices. Now, these are proprietary cannabis stock indices that are used to track the top 32 publicly traded cannabis companies by market cap in the U.S. and abroad. We have the green growth GGCI 7, which is the top 7, and the GGCI 25, which is the subsequent 25 after that. We're going to be doing bonus reports on a kind of periodic basis for quarterly financials for those people, those groups that are in the GGCI 7 and GGCI 25. Analyst reports are going to be excellent. They're about 10 to 15 pages long, deep dives on these companies. Beautiful stuff here. But let's go through the report, looking at some highlights here. First thing here, and again, this report's going to come out on the 10th of the following month. So the February report will be available on or around the 10th of March, right? I know it's like, hey, it's just a little, old data, but if you need kind of a collection of everything that's happened in the month, this is the report for you. And I want to hit on one thing. Why did we make this report? It's not because I'm bored. It's because this came as an idea from our last live stream. Sharon Burns, as well as other people, said, hey, what is going on with the stock market? What's up with this and that? And it gave us a great idea. So, thank you very much to the people that join these live streams, join in on the chat. Your feedback has been heard. Your ideas have been put into action, and they are right here on the screen for you. So our analyst Alex went through, and again, inflation for January, it reached about 0.6% for the month, 7.5% year over year. Let me actually maximize this so you can see a little bit more. Does that help out? Doesn't really help out. All right. For the year, and it clearly shows that the inflation is not transitory. Okay, inflation is not transitory. I know Jay Powell was saying, hey, it's transitory, things are going to be fine, but that's not the case. Now, fiscal and monetary policy in tandem to create this global demand shock while supply chains were in shambles due to economic lockdowns created a massive inflationary pulse. More money was chasing the same amount or even less goods, which means an increase in prices. And high inflation also caused inflation-hedged assets to just rise like crazy. Stocks, home prices, artwork, things of that nature. Now, the inflation impact was slow and then really aggressive. You kind of saw a hockey stick curve this last 6 months. And since it's a midterm election year, you're likely going to see a lot of deflection of blame for this inflation issue. At first, again, it was global challenges like climate disasters or COVID outbreaks are disrupting the supply chain. Now it's a cost of freedom to defend other countries that we have high inflation and high gas prices, or it's going to be demonizing specific groups, typically they're opponents of why this is happening, or focusing on specific issues that are important to the local constituents. So main thing to know, it's a compounding effect of many diverse factors, shutting down a machine, an economic machine, and then trying to generate flywheel effects very quickly just caused less than optimal results, right? We had this machine that was charging at 10,000 miles an hour, which is the economy, and then it comes to a grinding halt on, March 13th, and boom, it's over with, and then we got to try to get it all back together. Prices rise, but productivity did not rise at the same time, which causes this imbalance. But let's be honest as well, if you have half a financial brain, you saw this coming 12 to 18 months ago when the stimulus packages were announced. We printed 40 to 60% of all the dollars in existence in the last 24 months. So inflation is going to continue to persist. It's just what is the reason behind it will change as the stories change. Now, good news in January is that they created 467,000 jobs. This was, I think, versus what they expected to be a decline of like 100,000 jobs. So that's great. Unemployment, 4%. This is good stuff, flying right through it. Now, another one here, let's take a look at, and this is the jobs kind of chart here. We have some charts and a little bit of analysis here from our analysts. Now, taking a look at equities here, Latin America had the best performance during January with returns of positive 8%, and falls in the rest of the zones. Asia, negative 5%, Europe, negative 6%, USA, negative 7%, and Japan is the country with the worst returns here at negative 9%. So this is big stuff, seeing how the markets are moving and how it's affecting specific other locations. Now, is Latin America crushing it because more manufacturing is going down that way, reproportioning manufacturing from Southeast Asia and China over to Latin America for specific reasons? Who knows? There's lots to dig into and dive into about this, but this is kind of the great starter information you can get from our report here. Another piece of information here, let's look at just I'm not hitting everything in the report, just hitting some of the highlights here. Some key performance for the index here. The S&P 500, it declined almost 5.2%, mainly explained by poor performances in sectors such as real estate, consumer discretionary income, and technology, while energy and financials were positive here. So you can see that here with energy crushing it. That's why your light bill and your heating bill is up, because cost of doing these businesses is higher. They're performing, they're doing better. It's colder where I'm at in the Northern Hemisphere. Things like that are happening, but all these other ones are taking a big hit. So just some thoughts and considerations around that, as well as in the Nasdaq and the Dow Jones Industrial Average also showed negative performance of negative 8.77% and negative 3.21% respectively. And that has been influenced by a hawkish Fed speech here. And, maybe they're raising the rates this year. So when you look at things like interest rates, okay, why is that going to affect, the markets here? Cost of interest rates, if you don't know, are the cost of borrowing or compensation for lending money, depending on what side of the deal you're on. So lenders are going to be raising rates to make up for lost purchasing power due to inflation. So when inflation rises, interest rates have to rise, because fixed income assets like bonds, the income is based on a percentage. Now, if that percentage is being outpaced by inflation, got to raise them rates, baby. Now, the Fed was also buying up lots of equities and stocks, and this gave banks a lot of money to lend out, essentially. Now they're stopping these repo purchases. This means less money available for the banks to lend out. Interest rates rise because banks have to make more money make the most of the money with lesser cash balances. So rates are going to be going up. I think they said in March is going to be the first rate hike. They expect 4 to 5 of them this year, about a half percentage point or 50 basis points, up to or 25 basis points or up to 50 basis points. Who knows? Nobody knows until the day of it, but just something to keep your eyes on here. Let's see, and the last stuff here, the cannabis stuff here. So again, this is just a little bit of a tracker here, announcing the first inaugural look at our Green Growth CPAs, our Green Growth Cannabis Index number 7 and Green Growth Cannabis Index 25. Again, these are the companies that are in here. So in the top 7, you have Curaleaf, Verano, GTI, TrueLeaf, Cresco, Canopy, and Tilray. You can look into the report a little bit deeper about the methodology. That's what this link here is. It talks about the construction, how we came up with the methodology for this tracker as well. We did a 12-month back testing just to show how cannabis stocks have been performing for the last 12 months. It's been a big drawdown, and this is not because we picked bad stocks. This is just the cannabis, and we're not doing a picker. Don't take this index such that we're trying to outperform the market. We're trying to show you at a high level what is the 80% of the market doing and how is that driving the macro cannabis public markets. That's essentially what the goal of this is. We will likely come up with other indices like US only or micro cap only, things of this nature. If you have any ideas, let us know. But just back testing and showing you they're hovering at about $25 billion in valuation at the beginning of February 2021, all the way through January 2022, hitting at about like 11.5. So it's like a huge drawdown, like 50, 60% drawdown here. That's just because they've been getting crushed, but doesn't mean that these stocks are bad stocks either. As I brought up in the end of the year pitch about what to expect for 2022, I said, look at cannabis companies that are sitting on a ton of cash. A lot of these cannabis companies are sitting on a ton of cash. The price for the company is very disconnected from the performance of the company. And I think you're seeing like these large M&A deals, again, with the Verano stuff, more things going to be happening along that consolidation. Economies of scale is really going to be a big thing here for these businesses. So check out our indices. We're going to track how they perform. Again, analyst reports coming out for those top 7. So individual deep dives where we talk about how is Planet 13 doing? How is Tilray doing? We're going to dig through all the numbers on the balance sheet and on the income statement. We're going to look at different news pieces from them. We're going to look at technical analysis, charts and lines and all the cool stuff. I like this. I can nerd out on TA all day, showing you what is the downtrend, where are the good supports, and where are the good resistance things you should be looking at on how the stock is going to be moving, things of that nature. We looked at a first version for our Planet 13 today, and it's awesome. It's something fun. Here is our 25 companies. I don't want to go and read them all out. You can look through the report, drop through that, check it out. But there's going to be a lot of stuff going on here. And again, this was born from the viewers. So thank you very much for putting yourself out there and taking initiative and sharing that with us. So again, let's jump in here, see what Adam has to say. He's jumping in the chat. If you have any questions, drop them into the chat. We're at about the 50-minute mark. My goal is to make this an hour, be respectful of your time, but drop questions in and we'll get to those questions here. But Adam says, do you do industry and market comparison like fundamental KPIs among listed cannabis companies? The answer is yes, and that is coming out in our subsequent report. So this one I'm showing here on the screen, this was just our version 1 to get something out. This is called an MVP, minimally viable product. Our team needed to get something out into the wild to see what people thought about these things. And the feedback has been great. It seems like people on here like that. So yes, you're going to get individual statistics for individual companies, as well as a comparison chart over time showing how these ratios, turnover ratios, quick ratios, things of that nature, how those are performing against other cannabis companies, how they're trending over time. So you can spot big things like when a company is increasing their liabilities like crazy and their cash balance comes down, there's no way they're going to be able to pay off these liabilities. So you know that some type of acquisition is going to be happening or some kind of restructuring is going to happen. So yes, Michael, or Adam, in short, yes. In long, yes, lots of good stuff coming out here. So again, thank you very much for everyone that's contributed to this report, to our team, Alex, Marco, Danny, everyone in the back end for getting this stuff together. Thank you very much. And again, to the audience. All right, if there's any questions, I have a question that got submitted before, so I can go ahead and ask that question and answer. I need to get some water real quick. All right. So we had a question come in from one of our users as well. Okay, so the question is here, or actually it was a statement, and they wanted to kind of know how to proceed with this, but they had a crop loss, which is a common thing. And it was, for them, was due to failing testing. There was too much outside of the regulations, too much mold on there. Okay, so it failed testing. What do we do with this as an operator? What do we do? How do we write this off to make sure we're not negatively financially impacted? So I was very sorry to hear about this for them, but yes, you can write this off, but there are some specific details you need to know. It's going to be essentially that you can deduct the cost of goods sold value that is related to that specific crop. And when you're making these journal entries, make sure you're in the notes for the journal entry, you write off that this is for a crop failure, just in case you need to go deeper into that in a later date. And you're not, where did this money come from? Why is this being written off? It's not tied to anything. Make sure you, in the notes section, tie it to that failed crop. Again, this cannot be for the retail value. This is for the cost of goods sold value. And that COGS can include your electricity, your labor, your nutrients, your packaging, things like that. And you can book this as cost of goods inventory shrinkage in your accounting software. So if you do have a crop failure or crop loss, make sure you're booking it so you're not losing out on this COGS benefit. It can be a big bummer if you're going to be losing out on that, since COGS is, especially in a grow facility, is your main driver of everything. Make sure you don't misalign those transactions and those costs. All right, Adam has another question here. Do you recommend any books or other periodicals that cover the industry? There are many, many great websites out there. I have no affiliation with any of these except Green Growth CPAs. But you've got MJ Biz Daily, Marijuana Moment, Cannabis Business Executive, New Cannabis Ventures. Who else? Cannabis Industry Lawyer. I love him. He's a pretty good guy. He's got a lot of good information. Who else? Thomas Howard is his name if you want to look him up. He's a cool cat. He's got a lot of good YouTube information out there. Last Prisoner Project can keep you up on things. Ganjapreneur, Lawrence put in here. Any industry association. So here's also what I want to bring up about this is that looking at cannabis, yeah, it's a national thing. It's a state thing, but you really want to focus on your local market because regulations and things are so different from state to state because of the maturity of the market and the regulations. So looking for your state's cannabis industry association will likely have the most up-to-date information about, or that matters the most to you, like don't worry about federal legalization. I believe, and this is just my opinion, I believe it's very far away relative to any kind of state matters that are going to be more proportionally impactful to your business. So looking at your cannabis industry association is really important. Sign up for their newsletter. If you got to donate a little bit of bucks to get on the newsletter, I think it's a very good thing to be a part of because you're in the room with people that really matter. You're in the room with legislators, lobbyists, big operators that have a lot at stake. And I think that's something very important that you should consider looking into. But that would be the main things I would say on what to look for in different publications. Book-wise, the book is being written every day. The book of the cannabis industry is a never-ending book. You could probably go grab a book on law or something like this, but those things, they get outdated quickly. I think the best thing to learn, if you're looking to learn, is go to work in the industry, volunteer if you have to. If no one's going to hire you, volunteer and say, hey, I'll be a trimmer. I'll do this, I'll do that. I'll run inventory reports, whatever, especially if you have a specific skill outside of like growing cannabis. Like for me, I'm an analyst and a marketer, so I wanted to get into the industry. It was a great marriage between myself and Green Growth CPAs to get in the industry myself, as well as provide them with highly valuable content. This is how I got into the industry. Other people that do accounting, they may want to do like this kind of small little analyses for local dispensaries and say, hey, I can help you with this if you can help me out with the data. Leveraging your skills. Don't be scared to do free work. I think free work is very much overlooked quite often. Adam says, Gun to Your Head is the best book. I've never read that book. There's a lot of startup business books too, I think the greatest book, though, is just doing it and testing, because a lot of books are theory, and they're typically from one person's point of view, right? For especially like aside from books like The Tools of Titans, which is a Tim Ferriss book that kind of talks about like I think 100 people and they're like 13 questions and the answers to those 13 questions about what do they do for morning routine and this and that. I like those books. Those are good kind of books too to give you a multidisciplinary look at the same thing. But a book like Blitz Scaling from the LinkedIn founders, that was a very powerful book, but it talks about a time and a place in tech, and those kind of things may not always hold true. There are great frameworks discussed in that book, but doesn't mean that they're going to always be one-to-one for the cannabis industry or for the tech and industry as it is now. But getting out there and doing your work, putting in your effort, brushing shoulders with the right people. It's very easy. It's relatively easy, shall I say, to get in front of the largest cannabis business operators in your state just by going to association meetings, just by asking and sending them an email. It's a lot closer. So get out of your own way. Don't hold yourself back. Don't wait and say, hey, I have to have this level of credibility to reach out to these people. All they can do is tell you no. It's not like it's going to kill you. No one likes being told no. I don't always have agreements with people that I ask things of. I tell people no all the time, and people tell me no all the time. That you're anti-fragile, which means you get stronger as you flex the metal. You become stronger, right? They say where you break your bone is where it's the strongest. I think that's the same thing with your network, whether it's in cannabis or not. So sorry, I'm getting into a little personal coaching here, but that's kind of what I personally believe. Just do more than you think you can, and ask for more than you think you can ask for, because you'll be quite surprised by what happens. It's the serendipity of life. It's brought me to where I'm at today. Granted, there's a skill that gets developed over time, but just got to talk, baby. But that is about a 1-hour presentation here. If there's any more questions, drop those questions into the chat. I'd love to answer those for you. I'll stick around here about another few minutes, but if not, thank you very much for joining. It's been my complete pleasure to join you all every month to talk about the cannabis industry, to discuss the things that matter most to our industry, that matter most to you. Again, I really appreciate last month people sharing with us they wanted an industry analysis and report on macro markets as well as the cannabis industry. So version 1 we discussed today. Again, let me drop this in here. Green Growth CPA's Cannabis Stock Market Report. Go ahead and get that. Go to that page. You can download on there. Also, join our email list. If you are not on our email list, you are missing out. Tuesdays and Thursdays, lots of good email content, our new blogs, our new videos, new roundtable events, so many great things coming out. So subscribe to our email list. Let me just get a link. I think I have. Just make sure this works, and it does. It's beautiful. I'm gonna put this in there. Go ahead and go here, greengrowthcpas.com/join. You can join our email list. Again, don't miss out on that. There's over 30,000 operators and business people on that list. It's not a small list. It's got high activity on it too. So we'd love to have you on that list as well. But all right, it is 4:01 here where I'm at. I think it's a great presentation. Thank you again for joining. We're going to kind of wrap it up here since there's no other additional questions. But again, thank you very much for your time. I wish you much success in the coming weeks for March and the rest of February here. Be on the lookout. Our new report for February, financial markets, is going to come out at the close of February. So on or around March 10th, you'll get all of that data in this report, as well as an update on our cannabis industry index and many other new reports coming out. So again, join our email list, subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you found this video helpful, please, whatever platform you're on, hit the like, the subscribe buttons. It really does help us out to get more people to see these videos. Again, thank you for your time. Have a beautiful rest of your day, and we'll talk to you soon.